The knife went into Ethan's stomach, and the world turned white. He was 12 years old, 90 pounds of bones and hunger, and he'd just thrown himself at a man twice his size. Blood spread across the snow beneath him, warm and wrong. Behind the kidnapper, 6-year-old Lily stood frozen against the brick wall, tears streaming down her face. "Run!" Ethan screamed with his last breath. "Lily, run!" She ran, and Ethan collapsed into crimson snow, dying for a girl he barely knew. What he didn't know was that her father led a brotherhood of military veterans. And when the Iron Wolves discovered what this invisible homeless boy had done, they made sure the world would never forget his name. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The knife went in just below his ribs. Ethan felt it before he understood it. A pressure first, like someone punching him hard. Then heat spreading beneath his thin jacket. Then pain so sharp it stole his breath and turned the world white at the edges. The man's face was close to his, close enough that Ethan could see the rage there, the disbelief that a skinny homeless kid had dared to interfere. "Stupid boy," the man hissed. "Should have minded your own business." He yanked the blade out. The sound it made was wet and wrong. Ethan's legs stopped working. He was falling the snow-covered pavement, rushing up to meet him, and somewhere behind the man, 6-year-old Lily Chen was still frozen against the brick wall with terror in her eyes. "Move," Ethan told himself. "She needs to move." He hit the ground hard. Pain exploded through his entire body. Warmth was spreading across his stomach now, soaking through his donated sweater, melting the snow beneath him into pink slush. The man turned back toward Lily. His boots crunched in the snow as he took a step, then another. "No." Ethan's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. "No, not yet." He rolled onto his hands and knees. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through his side. 3 years on the streets had taught him to push through hunger, through cold, through loneliness. He could push through this, too. He had to push through this. Because Lily couldn't run on her own. Lily didn't know how to disappear. Lily needed someone to give her a chance. Ethan lunged forward. His body screamed in protest, but he grabbed the man's ankle with bloody fingers and held on with everything he had left. The kidnapper stumbled, cursed, tried to kick him away. "Run!" Ethan screamed at Lily. The word tore from his throat with desperate force. "Run now!" Something in his voice broke through her paralysis. Lily's small body unfroze. She turned and ran, her pink snow boots pounding against the icy pavement, her scream echoing between the buildings. The man kicked Ethan in the ribs. Once. Twice. Pain beyond pain. But Ethan didn't let go. Not until he heard Lily's scream change direction, grow distant, become someone else's emergency. Then his fingers loosened. His vision went gray. And the last thing Ethan Cole heard before darkness claimed him was the distant rumble of motorcycle engines growing closer. 6 hours earlier, Ethan had woken up behind Murphy's diner with frost on his eyelashes. The heating vent had kept him alive through the night, pushing warm air across his thin blanket in irregular bursts. But December in Michigan didn't care about heating vents. December in Michigan wanted to kill homeless children, and it was patient about it. Ethan sat up slowly, his joints stiff and aching. He was 12 years old, but some mornings he felt like he was 80, like the cold had settled into his bones and would never leave. His stomach cramped with hunger. He tried to remember his last real meal. 2 days ago. 3 Mr. Patterson from the bakery sometimes left day-old bread by the back door, But only if Ethan kept the alley clean. Only if he was useful. Ethan had learned that lesson early. Stay useful or stay invisible. Sometimes both at once. He crawled out from behind the dumpster and stood up, stamping his feet to get the blood moving. His sneakers had holes in them. Duct tape covered the worst spots, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Pretty if you were the kind of person who noticed pretty things. Ethan used to be that kind of person. Back when he had a mother who pointed out sunrises and told him the world was beautiful. Back before cancer took her voice, then her hair, then everything else. Back before his father looked at him with empty eyes and said, "I can't do this anymore." Back before the foster homes that never worked out, and the caseworkers who stopped trying, and the night Ethan decided the streets were safer than another house where he didn't belong. He shook off the memories. Memories didn't keep you warm. Memories didn't fill your stomach. He grabbed his broom, missing half its bristles found in a trash pile 2 months ago, and started sweeping the alley behind Murphy's. The work warmed him up, at least. And Mr. Patterson usually came out around 7 to check on things. Ethan was invisible to most people. They looked through him, past him, around him. But Mr. Patterson actually saw him. Not with pity or disgust, just saw him. Like Ethan was a person instead of a problem. "You're up early." Ethan turned. Mr. Patterson stood in the back doorway of the bakery, a paper bag in his hand, steam rising from whatever was inside. "Cold night," Ethan said. "Couldn't sleep much." Mr. Patterson nodded. He didn't ask questions. Didn't lecture. Didn't threaten to call social services like some people did. He just walked over and held out the bag. "Day-old muffins. Blueberry. Still good." Ethan took the bag, his hands shaking slightly. "Thank you, sir. You staying warm enough out here?" The question was simple. The concern behind it wasn't. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Yes, sir. The heating vent helps." "Winter's going to get worse," Mr. Patterson said. "Much worse. You think about coming inside sometime. I got a storage room in the back. Ain't much, but it's got a lock on the door, and it stays warm." Ethan stared at him. In 3 years on the streets, no one had ever offered him anything like that, not without wanting something in return. "Why?" The word came out before he could stop it. Mr. Patterson's weathered face creased with something that might have been sadness. "Because you're a kid. Because it's Christmas season. Because nobody should freeze to death in an alley when there's a warm room going empty." He turned and went back inside before Ethan could respond. The door closed with a soft click. Ethan stood there for a long moment, holding the bag of muffins, trying to understand why his eyes were burning. He hadn't cried in 3 years. Not when his mother died. Not when his father left. Not when the last foster family sent him back like defective merchandise. Crying didn't help. Crying was weakness, and weakness got you killed out here. He blinked hard and stuffed the emotion back down where it belonged. By afternoon, Ethan had made his rounds. He'd checked the recycling bins behind the grocery store. 7 bottles, 4 cans. Enough for maybe $1.50 at the Redemption Center. He'd swept 2 more alleys, earning a nod from Mr. Chen at the auto repair shop, but nothing else. He'd avoided the main streets where police did their afternoon patrols, where they'd tell him to move along or threaten to take him somewhere safe. Ethan knew about safe places. He'd been in 3 of them. Safe places had locks on the outside of doors. Safe places had older kids who hurt you when the adults weren't looking. Safe places were just another kind of prison. The streets were hard, but at least they were honest. Nobody pretended to care out here. He ended up in his usual spot. The alley behind Chen's auto repair, where the heating vent from their garage pushed warm air into the narrow space between buildings. In summer, the heat was suffocating. In winter, it was survival. This was where he'd first seen Lily Chen. She came out almost every afternoon, bundled in a pink coat with fur around the hood, her dark hair in pigtails that bounced when she moved. Her mother worked the front desk of the repair shop. Her father owned the place, though Ethan rarely saw him during the day. At night, sometimes Ethan heard motorcycles. Lots of them. He'd peek around the corner and see men in leather vests gathering in the garage. Big men with tattoos and beards, their bikes lined up like metal soldiers. They called themselves the Iron Wolves. Ethan had seen their patches. He stayed away on those nights. Men like that noticed things. Noticed people who didn't belong. But during the day, when it was just Lily playing in the snow while her mother worked, Ethan let himself watch. There was something about her laughter that made the cold feel less bitter. Something about her innocent joy that reminded him of a time when he'd been capable of joy too. Today, she was building a snowman. "You need a bigger bottom," Ethan said quietly, more to himself than to her. But she heard him. Her head turned, searching the shadows, and then she spotted him crouched near the heating vent. "What?" she asked. No fear in her voice, just curiosity. Ethan hesitated. He didn't talk to people. Talking led to questions. Questions led to police and social workers, and safe places that weren't safe at all. But she was 6. "What could a 6-year-old do?" "The bottom of your snowman," he said. "It needs to be bigger than the middle. Otherwise it'll fall over." Lily looked at her creation critically. Then she looked back at Ethan. "Can you help me?" 3 years of survival instinct screamed at him to stay hidden, to not get involved, to keep his distance from anyone who might notice him, remember him, report him. But her eyes were so hopeful, and it had been so long since anyone had wanted his help with anything. "Okay," Ethan said, "but just for a minute." He showed her how to pack the snow tighter, how to roll the ball so it picked up more snow as it moved, how to smooth the edges so the whole thing held together. She watched with intense concentration, her small face scrunched up with effort as she tried to copy his movements. When she got it right, she looked up at him with such pure delight that Ethan felt something crack in his chest. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan." "I'm Lily. Do you live around here?" The question should have made him pull back, should have triggered all his defenses, but she asked it like she was asking about his favorite color. Simple curiosity, nothing more. "Sort of," he said. "My daddy says it's cold outside. He says people should stay warm." "Your daddy's right. Are you warm enough?" Ethan looked at this little girl, this 6-year-old child, who was worried about whether a stranger was warm enough, and he didn't know what to say. When was the last time anyone had worried about him? "I'm okay," he finally managed. "Lily." Her mother's voice came from the back door of the shop. "Time to come in, sweetie." Lily looked at Ethan with something like disappointment. "I have to go. Will you be here tomorrow?" "Maybe." "I hope so. You're good at snowmen." She ran toward her mother, her pink boots leaving small prints in the snow. At the door, she turned and waved at him. A small gesture. Nothing important. But Ethan waved back. And for just a moment, he didn't feel invisible. Over the next week, it became a routine. Every afternoon, Lily would come outside. Every afternoon, Ethan would be there, watching from the shadows. Sometimes she'd talk to him. Sometimes she'd just play while he swept the alley or sorted through recycling. but she always waved when she went back inside. And he always waved back. He told himself it didn't mean anything. He told himself he was just staying warm by the heating vent. He told himself she was just a kid, and kids forgot people all the time. But something had shifted. Something small and dangerous. He'd started to care about something again. About someone. Caring was a mistake. He knew that. Caring meant you had something to lose. And Ethan had learned the hard way that everything you cared about got taken away eventually. His parents, his home, his childhood. The one friend he'd made on the streets, a boy named Tommy, had been picked up by child services 8 months ago. Ethan had hidden and watched them take him. He never saw Tommy again. Never found out where they sent him. Tommy just disappeared like he'd never existed. That was what happened when you let yourself care. People vanished. But Lily kept waving, and Ethan kept waving back. On the 7th day, everything changed. He noticed the van first. It was white, unmarked, with windows tinted too dark to see inside. It had been circling the block for 3 days, parking in different spots each time, watching. Ethan knew about watching. He did it himself constantly. Watching was how you survived. You watched for police who wanted to move you along. Watched for other homeless people who might steal your stuff. Watched for adults who looked at children in ways that made your skin crawl. The van was watching Lily. He was sure of it. Every day around the same time. Always when she was outside playing. Always pulling away before her mother came to get her. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run. This wasn't his problem. Getting involved meant getting noticed. Getting noticed meant getting caught. But he thought about Lily's smile. Her innocent questions about whether he was warm enough. The way she waved at him like he was a person worth acknowledging. He couldn't run. Not this time. On the 8th day, the van didn't just watch. It was late afternoon. The winter sun was already setting, turning the sky orange and purple. Lily was alone in the alley, making snow angels, while her mother finished up paperwork inside. Ethan watched from his usual spot. He'd been tense all day, unable to shake the feeling that something bad was coming. His stomach churned with more than hunger. Every sound made him flinch. The white van turned into the alley. It moved slowly, almost casually, but Ethan saw the way it angled toward Lily, saw the driver's side door open while the vehicle was still rolling. "Lily," Ethan breathed. "Lily, get up." She didn't hear him. She was lying on her back, laughing at the sky, making angel wings in the snow. A man stepped out of the van. Big, maybe 6 feet tall, with a rough stubble, and eyes that held nothing but calculation. He moved fast. Too fast. 1 second he was by the van, the next he was reaching for Lily. "No!" Ethan didn't remember deciding to move. His body just launched itself from the shadows like a missile, made of desperation and fear. He covered the distance in seconds, his thin legs pumping his worn sneakers, slipping on ice. The man's hand closed around Lily's arm. She screamed a high, terrified sound that would haunt Ethan's nightmares for years to come. Ethan slammed into the man's side with everything he had. 90 pounds of homeless kid against 200 pounds of predator. It shouldn't have worked. It should have been nothing. But desperation gives strength that physics can't explain. The man staggered. His grip on Lily loosened. She stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock, her breath coming in terrified gasps. "Run!" Ethan screamed at her. "Lily, run!" She didn't move, frozen, paralyzed, the way children get when the world suddenly becomes too frightening to comprehend. The man recovered fast. He spun on Ethan with a snarl, his face twisted with rage. "Stupid kid. You have no idea what you just did." He shoved Ethan backward. Hard. Ethan's feet slipped on the ice, and he went down his hip, cracking against frozen pavement. Pain shot up his side, but he was already scrambling to his feet. Keep his attention, Ethan thought. Keep him focused on me. Leave her alone. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. Leave her alone. The man laughed. A cold, ugly sound. Or what's a little street rat going to do? He reached into his jacket. Ethan saw the movement, saw the way the man's hand wrapped around something concealed. Knife, his street instincts whispered. He has a knife. Ethan knew he should run. Every survival lesson he'd learned told him to run. But Lily was still frozen, still standing there in her pink coat with tears streaming down her face. He couldn't leave her. The blade came out, short and ugly, gleaming in the fading daylight. "Last chance, kid," the man said. "Walk away. Pretend you didn't see anything, and maybe I let you live." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands shook. His legs wanted to buckle, but he thought about his mother, about how she'd taught him to be kind, even when the world wasn't kind back. About how she'd said right before the cancer took her voice, "Promise me you'll be brave, Ethan. Promise me you'll be good." He'd made that promise. "No," Ethan said. His voice trembled, but didn't break. "I won't let you take her." The man's eyes went cold. Decision made. He lunged. Ethan tried to dodge, but there was nowhere to go. The knife punched into his stomach with a wet, awful sound. For one strange moment, he felt nothing. Just pressure. Just cold. Then the pain hit like a freight train. The man yanked the blade out. Ethan heard himself make a sound, something between a gasp and a whimper that didn't sound human. His legs gave out. He was falling the world, tilting sideways, blood spreading across his donated sweater in a dark stain. But as he fell, he reached out, grabbed the man's coat, pulled with every ounce of strength his failing body could summon. The man stumbled forward off balance. His attention shifted from Lily to Ethan for just a second. A second was enough. "Run!" Ethan screamed. The word tore from his throat with his last breath of strength. "Lily, run!" Something broke through her paralysis. Maybe his voice. Maybe pure survival instinct. Lily turned and ran, her small legs pumping her screams, echoing off the buildings. The man tried to go after her, but Ethan's bloody fingers were still tangled in his coat. He kicked Ethan in the ribs once, twice, 3 times. Ethan felt bones crack, felt pain beyond anything he'd ever experienced. But he didn't let go. Not until Lily's screams faded around the corner. Not until he heard adult voices shouting in the distance. Not until he knew she was safe. Then his fingers unclenched. His vision went gray. The cold crept in, and Ethan Cole, 12 years old and invisible, closed his eyes. The last thing he heard was motorcycle engines. Many of them, growing closer, growing angry. Marcus Chen was 3 blocks away when his phone rang. He was in the middle of reviewing invoices at his desk, the mundane work of keeping a legitimate business running. The Iron Wolves automotive repair shop had been his dream for 15 years. A way to give his brother's fellow veterans, men who'd served their country and come home to nothing honest work and steady pay. The motorcycle club was more than just bikes and leather vests. It was family, brotherhood, A place where men who'd seen the worst of humanity could still believe in something good. His phone buzzed. Jenny's number. "Hey, babe, what's—" "Marcus." Her voice was wrong. Tight. Terrified. "Marcus, someone tried to take Lily." The world stopped. "What?" "A man. In the alley. He grabbed her. But there was a boy. A homeless boy. He fought the man. Marcus, there's so much blood. The boy is hurt. He's hurt so bad." Marcus was already moving. His chair crashed backward. His boots thundered on the concrete floor. "Where's Lily?" "She's with me. She's safe. She ran inside screaming. But Marcus, the boy—" "Call 911. I'm coming." He burst out of his office. In the garage, 3 of his brothers looked up from their work. Tank, a former Army Ranger built like his namesake. Spider, lean and sharp ex-military intelligence. Jinx, who'd been a combat medic before he'd been anything else. They saw Marcus's face and stopped what they were doing. "Someone went after Lily," Marcus said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "In the alley. Now!" No questions. No hesitation. The brothers moved as one. They found him in the snow. The boy was small, painfully small. Thin in a way that spoke of too many missed meals. His dark hair was matted with blood and ice. His face was pale, almost blue. And beneath him, spreading across the snow in a crimson stain, was more blood than any child should have in their entire body. "Jesus Christ," Tank breathed. Jinx was already on his knees beside the boy, his medic training taking over. His hands moved fast, pulling up the blood-soaked sweater, assessing the wound. "Knife wound. Deep. He's lost a lot of blood." Jinx pressed his hands against the injury, applying pressure. "We need an ambulance now. Tank, get me towels, blankets, anything." Marcus stood frozen for a moment, staring at this child who'd put himself between a predator and his daughter. A homeless kid. A street rat, if you believed what some people said about children like him. This boy had saved Lily's life. "Who is he?" Spider asked quietly. "I don't know." Marcus's voice was rough. "Jenny said he's been around the alley for a while, sweeping, collecting cans, homeless." "Kid's got courage," Tank said. He returned with an armful of shop towels, pressing them into Jinx's waiting hands. "Took on a grown man with a knife. Didn't run." "He's dying," Jinx said flatly. "His pulse is thready. He's going into shock. Where's that ambulance?" Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marcus knelt in the snow, ignoring the cold soaking through his jeans. He looked at the boy's face. So young, so pale. The face of a child who'd already seen too much of the world's ugliness. "Hey," Marcus said softly. "Hey, kid, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes fluttered. For a moment they focused on Marcus's face. Brown eyes full of pain but still somehow aware. "Lily," the boy whispered. "Is she... She's safe. You saved her. She's safe because of you." Something like peace flickered across the boy's features. Then his eyes rolled back and his body went limp. "He's crashing," Jinx said sharply. "Starting CPR." The ambulance screamed into the alley. Paramedics rushed forward. Marcus stepped back to let them work, but he didn't leave. He stood there in the blood-stained snow, watching them load this anonymous, invisible child into the vehicle. "I'm going with him," Marcus said. Spider grabbed his arm. "Marcus, you should be with Lily. Jenny's with Lily. She's safe." Marcus pulled free. "This kid has nobody. You see anyone else here who gives a damn about him? He's not dying alone." He climbed into the ambulance. The doors closed. and somewhere in the darkness of failing organs and fading heartbeats, Ethan Cole heard a voice. "Stay with us, kid. Stay with us. You're not alone anymore." The hospital was chaos. Ethan flatlined twice in the ambulance. Twice the paramedics shocked his small chest and dragged him back from wherever he'd been going. By the time they reached the emergency room, the doctors were waiting a full trauma team ready to fight for a life that nobody else had thought worth fighting for. Marcus sat in the waiting room. His hands were still stained with the boy's blood. He hadn't washed them. Couldn't bring himself to. His phone had been buzzing constantly. Jenny checking in. Spider with updates on the police investigation. The rest of his brothers wanting to know what they could do. The Iron Wolves took care of their own. But this kid wasn't one of their own. He was a stranger. A homeless child with no family, no connections, no one to claim him. Except he'd saved Lily. In Marcus's world, that meant something. That meant everything. "Mr. Chen." He looked up. A doctor stood in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs, her face carefully neutral. "The boy, he's alive, barely. The knife damaged his small intestine and nicked his liver. We repaired what we could, but the next 48 hours are critical. He's lost a significant amount of blood." Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Can I see him?" The doctor hesitated. "Are you family?" "No, I don't know who he is. I don't even know his name." "Then I'm afraid he saved my daughter's life." Marcus's voice was quiet, but carried a weight that made the doctor pause. "He's a child, a homeless child with no one. He was bleeding out in an alley and no one would have even noticed if my family hadn't been there. So you tell me what the policy is for kids like him. You tell me who's supposed to sit with him when he wakes up scared and in pain." The doctor studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Room 412, pediatric ICU. He's sedated, but you can sit with him." "Thank you. Mr. Chen." She stopped him as he turned to leave. "The police are going to have questions. The boy's injuries are consistent with assault, and there's no record of him in any system we can find. No family, no guardian, no caseworker. For all intents and purposes, this child doesn't exist." "He exists," Marcus said firmly. "He matters." The doctor nodded slowly. "I hope so. Because right now you might be the only person in the world who thinks so." The room was small and sterile. Ethan lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical indifference. Tubes ran into his arms, delivering fluids and medication. A monitor tracked his heartbeat, each blip, a reminder that he was still alive. Still fighting. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down heavily. He'd called Jenny to check on Lily, who was shaken, but physically unharmed. He'd called Spider to coordinate the brothers. He'd called the police to give his statement. Now there was nothing to do but wait. He looked at the boy, at the thin arms covered in fading bruises, at the hollowed cheeks that spoke of chronic hunger, at the old scars on his hands and forearms, cuts and scrapes that had healed without medical attention. This child had been surviving on his own for a long time, fighting a war that no one else even saw. "I don't know if you can hear me," Marcus said quietly, "but I want you to know something. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. You hear me? You're not alone anymore." The machines beeped. The ventilator hissed. And somewhere beneath the sedation, Ethan Cole, who had spent 3 years believing he was invisible, began to understand that someone had finally seen him. Marcus didn't sleep that first night. He sat in the hard plastic chair beside Ethan's bed, watching the monitors track each heartbeat, each breath. The numbers flickered and changed, telling a story of a body fighting to survive. A body that had already survived too much. Around 3 in the morning, Ethan started to stir. His fingers twitched against the white sheets. His eyelids fluttered. A soft moan escaped his cracked lips. Then his eyes flew open. "No!" Ethan tried to sit up, his hands clawing at the tubes in his arms. "Lily, where's I have to—" "Easy, easy." Marcus was on his feet instantly, his hands gentle but firm on Ethan's shoulders. "You're safe. Lily's safe. Everyone's okay." Ethan's wild eyes found Marcus's face. For a moment there was no recognition, just pure animal fear. The look of a child who'd learned that waking up meant danger. "Who are you?" Ethan's voice was raw, barely a whisper. "Where am I?" "I'm Marcus Chen, Lily's father. You're in the hospital. You've been out for almost 18 hours. The fear didn't leave Ethan's eyes, but something else crept in. Confusion. Suspicion. "Hospital," he repeated flatly. "They'll call social services." "Maybe, but right now the only thing that matters is you getting better." Ethan's jaw tightened. Marcus saw him calculating, assessing, looking for the exit. The survival instincts of a street kid still running even in a hospital bed. "I should go." Ethan's hands moved toward the IV line again. "I can't be here. They'll put me back in the system. I can't." "Hey." Marcus caught his wrist gently. "Hey, look at me." Ethan froze. His eyes met Marcus's. "You saved my daughter's life. You understand that a man with a knife was trying to take her, and you, a kid half his size, you stopped him. You almost died stopping him." Ethan said nothing. His face was unreadable. "So whatever happens next, whatever you're scared of, I need you to know something." Marcus leaned closer. "You're not facing it alone. Not anymore. You don't know me. I know you're brave. I know you're selfless. I know you did something most grown men wouldn't do." Marcus released his wrist. "That's enough. That's more than enough." Ethan stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked away, blinking hard. "The man," he said quietly. "Did they catch him?" Marcus's expression darkened. "The police are looking. He ran when my brothers showed up. But they'll find him." "Your brothers? My motorcycle club. The Iron Wolves." Something flickered across Ethan's face. Recognition. He'd seen them before gathering in the garage late at night. "You're one of those bikers." "I am. People say you're dangerous." Marcus smiled grimly. "We can be, when someone threatens our family." The word hung in the air between them. Family. Ethan's throat worked, but no sound came out. A nurse appeared in the doorway, checking the monitors, adjusting the IV drip. She looked at Marcus with raised eyebrows. "Visiting hours don't start until 8. "I'm not leaving." The nurse opened her mouth to argue, then saw the look on Marcus's face. She sighed and moved on. When they were alone again, Ethan spoke. His voice was small, stripped of all the toughness he'd been trying to project. "Why are you here?" Marcus settled back into his chair. "Because you need someone to be here." "But I'm nobody." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. So matter-of-fact. So certain. This 12-year-old child stating his own worthlessness like it was an obvious truth. "You're wrong about that," Marcus said quietly. "You're wrong about that, and I'm going to prove it to you." Ethan didn't respond. His eyes drifted closed. Exhaustion pulling him back under. But just before he fell asleep, Marcus saw something he hadn't seen before. A single tear sliding down the boy's hollow cheek. The brothers came at dawn. Tank arrived first, carrying a worn paperback Western and a thermos of coffee. He nodded at Marcus, took the chair by the window, and settled in without a word. His presence filled the room, solid, reliable, immovable. Ethan woke to find a stranger in the corner. Who? He tensed immediately, his body coiling like a spring. Easy, kid. Tank didn't look up from his book. Name's Tank. I'm with Marcus. Why are you here? Making sure nobody bothers you. Tank turned a page. Go back to sleep. Ethan watched him warily. I don't need a babysitter. Didn't say you did, but you got one anyway. There was no arguing with that tone. Ethan recognized it the voice of someone who'd made a decision and wouldn't be moved from it. He'd heard it from police officers, from social workers, from foster parents who'd already decided he wasn't worth the trouble. But this was different somehow. Tank wasn't looking at him like a problem to be solved. He was just there, present, like a mountain that had decided to sit in the corner. You were in the military, Ethan said suddenly. Tank glanced up. What makes you say that? The way you sit, the way you checked the room when you came in. My dad used to do that. Something shifted in Tank's expression. Your dad was military. Army. 2 tours in Afghanistan. Before... Ethan stopped. His jaw clenched. Before what? Before he came back different. Tank was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. That happens sometimes. War changes people, not always in ways they can fix. He couldn't fix it. Ethan's voice was flat. So he left. Your dad left you, after my mom died. He said he couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't look at me. Said I reminded him too much of her. Tank closed his book. For the first time, he really looked at Ethan. Not with pity. Ethan had seen enough pity to last a lifetime. With something else. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. How long you been on the streets? 3 years. Since you were 9. I was in foster care first, for a while. Ethan's hands twisted in the thin hospital blanket. It didn't work out. Tank didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He'd seen enough kids come through the system chewed up and spit out by people who were supposed to protect them. Well, Tank said finally, you're not on the streets now. This is temporary. Hospital will call CPS. CPS will put me somewhere. I'll run again. What if you didn't have to run? Ethan looked at him sharply. What do you mean? Tank shrugged. Just saying. Sometimes things change. Sometimes people show up who actually give a damn. Nobody gives a damn, not about kids like me. Marcus does. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, why? Because you saved his little girl. Because you're brave. Because... Tank paused, choosing his words carefully. Because some of us know what it's like to be thrown away. And we decided we're not going to let that happen to anyone else. Not if we can help it. The monitors beeped in the silence that followed. I don't understand, Ethan whispered. You don't have to understand it yet. You just have to let it happen. The police came mid-morning. 2 detectives, a man and a woman, both wearing the tired expressions of people who'd seen too much and slept too little. They introduced themselves as Detective Morrison and Detective Hayes. Marcus stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching. We need to ask you some questions about yesterday, Detective Morrison said to Ethan. About the man who attacked you. Ethan nodded slowly. His face had gone blank, the expression of someone who'd learned to hide everything. Can you describe him? Tall, maybe 6 feet. Stubble on his face, brown jacket. He had a white van. You noticed the van? It had been driving around for 3 days, always at the same time, always watching. Ethan's voice was steady, controlled. I knew something was wrong. Detective Hayes leaned forward. You knew how? When you live on the streets, you learn to watch people. You learn to recognize when someone's hunting. The detectives exchanged a glance. And you decided to intervene against a grown man with a knife. He was going to take Lily. Ethan's control cracked just for a second. I couldn't let him take her. That was very brave. It was stupid. Ethan's jaw tightened. I almost died. I should have just called for help. There wasn't time, Marcus said quietly from the wall. You did what you had to do. Detective Morrison cleared his throat. We've identified the suspect. His name is Vincent Marsh. He's connected to a trafficking organization we've been investigating for 8 months. The room went silent. Trafficking? Marcus's voice was dangerously low. You're telling me a trafficker tried to grab my daughter? Mr. Chen, I understand this is difficult. Difficult. Marcus pushed off the wall. This animal tried to kidnap my child. He stabbed a 12-year-old boy who got in his way, and you're telling me he's part of something bigger. We believe the organization has been operating across 5 states. At least 23 children have gone missing in the past 2 years. We've been building a case, but we haven't been able to get close to their leadership. Ethan watched the exchange with growing horror. 23 children. Lily could have been one of them. He could have been one of them back when he first hit the streets and didn't know the rules yet. Because of what happened yesterday, Detective Hayes said carefully. We now have a witness. We have evidence. We have a chance to bring these people down. The boy is not testifying, Marcus said immediately. He's 12 years old. He's been through enough. Mr. Chen, he almost died. He's got nobody. And you want to put him in front of a bunch of lawyers who'll tear him apart. We want to stop these people from taking any more children. The room fell silent again. Everyone looked at Ethan. He sat very still in his hospital bed, processing what he'd just heard. His intervention hadn't just saved Lily. It had exposed something much bigger, something much more dangerous. I'll do it, he said quietly. Marcus turned sharply. Ethan, if it stops them from hurting other kids, I'll do it. Detective Morrison studied him with something like respect. You understand this won't be easy. These people have resources. They have lawyers. They'll try to discredit you. I've been called worse than anything a lawyer can come up with. They might also try to retaliate. Ethan's expression didn't change. They can try. Marcus let out a long breath. He looked at this boy, this homeless, abandoned, invisible boy, and saw something that made his chest tight. Courage. Real courage. The kind that doesn't flinch even when it knows exactly what it's facing. If he testifies, Marcus said slowly, he gets protection. Real protection. Not some caseworker who checks in once a month. I want to know he's safe. We can arrange protective custody. No. Marcus's voice cut through the detective's words like a blade. Not the system. The system already failed him. My brothers and I will handle his protection. The detectives exchanged another look. They knew the Iron Wolves by reputation. They knew what these men were capable of. That's unconventional, Detective Hayes said carefully. It's non-negotiable. After a long moment, Detective Morrison nodded. We'll be in touch about the details. In the meantime, Mr. Marsh is still at large. We'd advise caution. They left. The room felt smaller without them, heavier with everything that had been said. Marcus turned to Ethan. You didn't have to agree to that. Yes, I did. Why? Ethan was quiet for a moment, staring at his hands. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because when I was on the streets, I saw things. Kids disappearing. Kids getting into cars with strangers and never coming back. I always wondered what happened to them. He looked up, and his eyes were older than any 12-year-old's should be. Now I know. And if I can stop it from happening to anyone else, I have to try. Marcus didn't have words for what he felt in that moment, so he just nodded and sat back down in his chair. Tank, who had been silent through the entire exchange, finally spoke. "Kid's got more guts than half the men I served with." He wasn't wrong. Word spread fast through the Brotherhood. By evening, the Iron Wolves had mobilized. They came in shifts, 2 men at a time, rotating every 4 hours. They filled the small hospital room with their leather and their tattoos and their quiet, watchful presence. Jinx arrived with a deck of cards and spent 2 hours teaching Ethan sleight-of-hand tricks, his patience endless, his praise genuine. Spider came with a chessboard and discovered that Ethan had never learned to play. He taught him the basics, then proceeded to lose 3 games in a row because the kid learned terrifyingly fast. Reaper, whose face could make grown men cross the street, brought comic books and read them aloud in voices so dramatic that Ethan actually laughed. It was the first time anyone had heard him laugh. Old Duke, the chapter's founder, stopped by with a weathered Bible and a gentleness that seemed impossible in a man his size. He didn't preach, didn't lecture, just sat quietly and told Ethan stories about his own childhood, about growing up poor in Alabama, about losing his father in Vietnam, about the long road that had led him here. "We're all broken somewhere," Duke said. "Every man in this club has got cracks running through him. But that's what Brotherhood is for. We hold each other together." Ethan listened with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Hunger, maybe. The hunger of a child who'd been starving for connection and hadn't even known it. On the 3rd night, Marcus returned from checking on Lily to find Ethan awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep." Ethan shook his head. "I keep thinking about the van, about how long he was watching before he made his move. 3 days, at least. Maybe longer." Marcus pulled his chair closer. "The police are looking for him." "They won't find him." Ethan's voice was certain. "He's not stupid. He knows people are hunting him now. He'll disappear." "Maybe. He will." Ethan turned his head to look at Marcus. "And when things cool down, he'll try again. Not Lily, she's too protected now, but someone else's kid. Someone who doesn't have you watching out for them." Marcus didn't argue. He'd been thinking the same thing. "That's why I have to testify," Ethan continued. "It's not enough to stop one guy. You have to stop the whole operation." "That's not your responsibility. You're 12. So were most of the kids they took." Ethan's jaw tightened. Age doesn't matter to people like that. It shouldn't matter to us either. Marcus studied him in the dim light of the hospital room. This boy, who had nothing, who had been thrown away by everyone who should have protected him, who still somehow believed he owed something to a world that had never given him anything. "Where did you come from?" Marcus asked quietly. "Who taught you to think like this?" Ethan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant. "My mom, she was a nurse. She used to work in the free clinic downtown taking care of people who couldn't afford regular doctors. She'd come home exhausted, smelling like antiseptic, and she'd still sit with me and ask about my day." His throat worked. "She used to say that kindness was a choice you made every day, that the world would try to make you hard, but you didn't have to let it. She said—" He stopped blinking hard. "What did she say?" "She said that the measure of a person wasn't what they did when it was easy. It was what they did when it cost them something." Marcus felt something break open in his chest. This boy's mother had given him a compass, a way to navigate a world that had been nothing but cruel since her death. And even now, bleeding and broken and alone, he was still following it. "Your mother sounds like she was an amazing woman." "She was." Ethan's voice cracked. "She was, and then she got sick, and it wasn't fair, and my dad couldn't handle it, and now she's gone, and I'm—" He stopped. His whole body was shaking. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his hand on Ethan's shoulder, steady and warm. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. "I know you don't believe it yet. I know you've got every reason not to trust anyone. But I'm telling you the truth, Ethan. Whatever happens next, you've got people in your corner." Ethan didn't respond. But he didn't pull away either. And when Marcus finally left for the night, handing off watch duty to Tank, Ethan spoke one more time. "Marcus." He turned at the door. "Yeah, thank you." The words were barely audible. "For staying." Marcus nodded. "Get some rest, kid. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He didn't know how right he was. The attack came on day 6. It started with a phone call. Spider voice tight with controlled urgency calling Marcus at 2 in the morning. "We've got movement. 3 vehicles, no plates circling the hospital." Marcus was on his feet before Spider finished talking. "How many men?" "Unknown. At least 8, probably more. They're professional, Marcus. Military-style coordination." "The trafficking ring." "Has to be. Word on the street is they're not happy about losing Marsh. They want to clean up loose ends before the trial." Loose ends. Meaning Ethan. Meaning a 12-year-old boy who'd had the audacity to fight back. "Lock it down," Marcus ordered. "Nobody gets near that room." "Already done. But Marcus, they're not just circling. They're probing. Testing our response times. These aren't street thugs. Someone trained these guys." Marcus's blood ran cold. He'd dealt with criminals before, but this was different. This was organized. Professional. This was war. He called the hospital on his way out the door. "Get Ethan ready to move. We may need to relocate." "Mr. Chen, we can't just—" "You can and you will. Call security. Tell them the Iron Wolves are coming in force, and we're not asking permission." He made 3 more calls. By the time he reached the hospital, every available brother was either there or on the way. 23 men in leather vests forming a perimeter that nobody was going to breach without a fight. Ethan was awake when Marcus burst into the room. Tank stood by the window, hand resting on something concealed beneath his vest. Jinx was at the door, muscles coiled ready. "They're here, aren't they?" Ethan's voice was calm. Too calm. The voice of a child who'd accepted that the world wanted him dead. "They're not getting anywhere near you." "You should let me go. Draw them away from the hospital. There are other patients here. Kids." "Absolutely not. I'm not worth—" "Stop." Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides and crouched beside the bed, forcing Ethan to meet his eyes. "Stop saying you're not worth it. Stop thinking your life matters less than anyone else's. That ends now. You hear me?" Ethan stared at him, eyes wide. "I don't know what's about to happen," Marcus continued, his voice fierce. "But I know this. Every man in this building right now is here for you. They're here because you matter. Because what you did matters. Because we don't let our own face danger alone, and whether you like it or not, you're one of us now." The monitors beeped in the silence. Then Ethan nodded. Just once. Just slightly. But it was enough. The assault never came. The vehicles circled for another hour, then disappeared into the night. Spider's contacts reported that the trafficking ring's leadership had pulled back too much heat, too many witnesses, too many angry bikers with military training. They'd try again. Everyone knew it. But not tonight. As dawn broke over the hospital, Marcus sat slumped in his chair, exhausted, but unwilling to leave. Ethan was finally asleep, his small chest rising and falling steadily, his face peaceful for the first time since Marcus had met him. Tank appeared in the doorway. "Perimeter's secure. Brothers are rotating out for rest." "Good." "Marcus." Tank hesitated. The kid. What's the plan? Marcus looked at Ethan. At this broken, brave, impossible child who'd somehow stumbled into their lives and changed everything. I'm working on it. He can't go back to the streets. I know. And the system. I know. Marcus's voice was heavy. I'm not letting him disappear into foster care hell. Not after everything. Tank nodded slowly. The brothers are talking about maybe setting something up, something permanent. What kind of something? We know people. Good people. There's a woman who runs an orphanage across town, Mrs. Hayes. Lost her husband a few years back. He was one of us founding member. She takes in kids that the system failed. Gives them a real chance. Marcus filed that information away. Set up a meeting, after Ethan's stable enough to leave here. Will do. Tank paused at the door. He's a good kid, Marcus. Strongest 12-year-old I've ever seen. Yeah. Marcus's voice was rough. He is. Tank left. The room settled into quiet, and in his sleep Ethan murmured something that made Marcus's heart clench. Mom? Marcus reached out and touched the boy's hand. You're okay. You're safe. Ethan's fingers curled around his, holding on, like he'd finally found something worth holding on to. The call came at 4:47 a.m. on Ethan's 10th day in the hospital. Marcus was dozing in his chair when his phone buzzed. Spider's name flashed on the screen, and something about the hour made Marcus's stomach drop before he even answered. Talk to me. We've got a problem. Spider's voice was clipped professional, the voice he used when things were about to go sideways. Intel just came through from my contact in the FBI. The trafficking ring isn't backing off. They're escalating. Marcus was on his feet, moving into the hallway so Ethan wouldn't hear. Escalating how? They've brought in outside contractors, professional cleaners. Word is they've got a 2-target operation planned. 2 targets. The kid and your family. Simultaneous hits. They want to send a message. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Lily. Jenny and Lily are still at the house. I've got brothers watching, but if these guys are as good as my source says, get them out, now. Take them to the clubhouse. Already moving, but Marcus, there's more. What? Spider hesitated. That hesitation scared Marcus more than anything else. The hit on the hospital is scheduled for tomorrow night, during the winter storm. Marcus closed his eyes. A storm meant reduced visibility, slower police response, perfect cover for an assault. How solid is this intel? Solid enough that my FBI contact is burning his career to warn us. These people are serious, Marcus. They're not just trying to eliminate witnesses. They're trying to prove that nobody crosses them and lives. Marcus leaned against the wall, his mind racing. 23 brothers in the Iron Wolves. Maybe 30 if he called in favors from allied chapters, against professional contractors with military training and unlimited resources. The math didn't work. What's our play? Spider asked. I'm thinking. Think fast. We've got maybe 18 hours. Marcus looked back through the window at Ethan, still sleeping in his hospital bed. This kid had already survived more than most people faced in a lifetime. And now, because he'd had the courage to save a little girl, professional killers were coming for him. We don't run, Marcus said finally. We don't hide. We make them regret ever coming to our town. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Ethan knew something was wrong the moment Marcus walked back in. He'd learned to read people during his years on the streets. Body language, facial expressions, the slight tension in someone's shoulders that meant danger. Marcus was trying to hide it, but Ethan saw everything. What happened? Marcus hesitated. Ethan could see him weighing options, trying to decide how much truth a 12-year-old could handle. Don't, Ethan said quietly. Don't protect me from it. Whatever's coming, I need to know." Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled his chair close and sat down. "The people who sent that man for Lily. They're not giving up. They're sending more people. Professional people." Ethan's hands curled into fists beneath the blanket. "When, tomorrow night, there's a storm coming, they're using it as cover. And Lily, she's being moved somewhere safe. My brothers are protecting her." And Ethan processed this information with the same calm he'd developed on the streets. Fear was a luxury. Panic got you killed. You took the facts, you made a plan, you survived. "They're coming here," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Then I shouldn't be here. If I leave, they'll follow me. The hospital has other patients, kids in the pediatric ward, if there's a fight. You're not going anywhere." "Marcus, no." Marcus's voice was firm, but not angry. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking if you sacrifice yourself, everyone else stays safe. You're thinking your life is worth less than the other people in this building." Ethan didn't deny it. "But here's what you're not seeing," Marcus continued. "Running won't stop them. These people don't just want you dead. They want to prove they're untouchable. If you disappear, they'll still hit the hospital just to show they can. They'll still come for my family. The only way this ends is if we make it end." "How?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "We're working on that." The door opened, and Tank appeared, his massive frame filling the doorway. "Brothers are assembled. War Council in 20 minutes. Marcus nodded and stood. He paused at the door, looking back at Ethan. "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Can you move if we need to relocate? Can you walk?" Ethan tested his body, shifting in the bed, feeling the pull of healing stitches in his side. It hurt. It hurt a lot. But pain was just information. "I can move." "Good. Because by this time tomorrow things are going to get ugly." The War Council convened in the hospital's conference room, commandeered by Tank's simple method of telling the administrators that lives were at stake, and they could either cooperate or explain to the media why they hadn't. 26 men filled the space. Iron wolves from 3 different chapters called in by Marcus over the past week. They wore leather and denim ink covering arms and necks, faces weathered by hard living. To an outsider, they looked like criminals. Like exactly the kind of men society warned you about. But every single one of them had served their country. Every single one of them had buried brothers in combat. And every single one of them had answered the call when Marcus told them a 12-year-old boy needed protecting. Spider stood at the head of the room, a map spread out on the table. "Here's what we know. The hit team is 8 to 10 operatives military background, likely private contractors. They'll hit during the storm when visibility is low and response times are high. Primary target is Ethan. Secondary target is Marcus's family." "Jenny and Lily?" Reaper asked. "Already en route to the cabin up north. Ghost and Demon are driving them. They'll be off-grid by nightfall." Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. His wife and daughter were safe. That was one less thing to worry about. "What about the hospital?" Old Duke asked. His voice was calm, steady. The voice of a man who'd seen worse and survived it. "That's where it gets complicated." Spider pointed to the map. "The hospital has 3 main entrances, plus service doors and emergency exits. We can't cover them all, not with our numbers." "So we don't try to cover them all," Tank said. "We funnel them, make them come to us on our terms." "How?" Marcus spoke up. "We move Ethan. Not out of the hospital, they'll expect that, but to a different location inside. Somewhere defensible. Somewhere with limited access points." Spider nodded slowly. "The surgical wing. Under renovation. Only one way in reinforced doors, no civilians to worry about." "We set up there," Marcus continued. Let them think they're walking into an ambush, because they will be. Jinx leaned forward. What about the cops, FBI? If we've got intel on a hit, shouldn't we be calling in the cavalry? I talked to Detective Morrison an hour ago, Marcus said. FBI is taking the lead, but they can't mobilize a response team until they have confirmation of a threat. By the time they verify our intel, it'll be too late. So we're on our own. We're always on our own. That's not new. Silence fell over the room. Every man there knew what Marcus was asking. They weren't just protecting a kid. They were going to war against professionals. Some of them might not walk away. Old Duke broke the silence. I've been riding with this club for 43 years. Started it in a garage in Detroit with 5 guys who didn't have anything but their bikes and their word. We've buried brothers. We've faced down cops and criminals and everyone in between, but we've never not once turned our back on someone who needed us. He looked around the room, meeting each man's eyes. That boy in there saved a little girl's life. He took a knife in the gut and still fought, still screamed at her to run, still held on when any grown man would have let go. If we can't stand up for a kid like that, then what the hell are we even doing? Heads nodded, jaws set. So here's what's going to happen, Duke continued. We're going to plant ourselves between that boy and anyone who wants to hurt him. And if they want to get to him, they're going to have to go through every single one of us first. He looked at Marcus. What do you need from us, son? Marcus felt something swell in his chest. Pride. Gratitude. The bone-deep knowledge that he'd found his true family in these scarred, broken, beautiful men. Everything, he said. I need everything you've got, Tont. They moved Ethan at midnight. The storm had started 2 hours earlier, snow falling thick and fast, wind howling through the hospital corridors whenever a door opened. It was exactly the cover the contractors would be counting on. It was also exactly the cover the Iron Wolves were counting on. Ethan walked between Marcus and Tank, his side burning with every step, his jaw clenched against the pain. A wheelchair would have been easier, but wheelchairs were slow. If something went wrong, he needed to be able to move. How you doing? Marcus asked quietly. Fine. You're a terrible liar. I'm a great liar. I'm just not trying right now. Marcus almost smiled. Even facing down professional killers, the kid had spirit. They reached the surgical wing without incident. Jinx had already set up a makeshift command post in one of the operating theaters. Radios, first aid supplies, everything they might need. 6 brothers were positioned throughout the wing, covering sight lines and choke points. Get comfortable, Tank told Ethan. It's going to be a long night. Ethan sat on a gurney, his back against the wall, his eyes scanning the room. He'd never been in a real operating theater before. The equipment looked alien, intimidating. You know how to use a radio? Spider asked, handing him a small walkie-talkie. Push the button talk. Let go to listen. Smart kid. If anything happens, if someone gets through who isn't wearing a vest with our patch, you call for help. Don't try to be a hero. I'm not a hero. The hole in your stomach says otherwise. Ethan didn't have a response to that. The hours crept by. Midnight became 1 a.m. 1 became 2. The storm raged outside, rattling windows and plunging the city into white chaos. Reports came in every 15 minutes, brothers checking in from their positions, confirming no movement. Ethan couldn't sleep. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. He kept thinking about the man in the alley, about the look in his eyes when he'd pulled out the knife. Cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who saw children as products, as commodities. There were more men like that coming. Right now. Through the storm. Hey, he looked up. Marcus had settled onto the gurney beside him, leaving a few feet of space between them. You should try to rest. Can't. I know the feeling. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I was deployed 3 times, Afghanistan twice, Iraq once. Every time before a mission, I'd lie awake all night running scenarios in my head. What could go wrong? What I'd do if it did? Did it help? No. The thing about combat is you can plan all you want, but the second bullets start flying, everything changes. You fall back on training and instinct. The scenarios in your head don't mean anything. Ethan considered this. So why are you telling me? Because I want you to know that being scared is normal. Being terrified is normal. It doesn't make you weak. Marcus turned to look at him. What makes you strong is what you do when you're scared. And kid, I've seen what you do. You don't run. You don't freeze. You fight. I fight because I don't know what else to do. That's more than most people have. The radio crackled. Spider's voice tense. Movement at the east entrance. 3 vehicles. No plates. Marcus was on his feet instantly. How many? Can't tell yet. They're holding position. Looks like they're waiting for something. Probably coordination with another team. Where's Reaper? North stairwell. Duke's got the main corridor. Tanks moving to support. Tell everyone to hold. Don't engage until they breach. The radio went silent. Marcus checked his weapon, a compact pistol he'd been carrying since the threats started. Ethan watched him with wide eyes. It's about to happen, isn't it? Yeah, kid, it is. What do I do? Marcus knelt beside the gurney, his face level with Ethan's. You stay here. You stay down. If someone comes through that door who isn't one of us, you run. There's an emergency exit at the end of the hall. It leads to a service corridor. Follow it until you reach the parking structure. Spider's got a car waiting there. Keys are under the visor. I'm not running. Ethan, I'm not. His voice was steady, his eyes fierce. I've been running my whole life. From foster homes, from the system, from everyone who was supposed to help me and didn't. I'm done running. This isn't about pride. These men will kill you. Then they'll kill me, but I'm not leaving you to fight alone. Marcus stared at him. This 12-year-old boy with nothing, no family, no home, no reason to stay, refusing to abandon people he'd known for barely 2 weeks. Your mother would be proud of you, Marcus said quietly. Ethan's eyes glistened. She'd probably tell me I'm being stupid. Yeah, well, sometimes stupid and brave look exactly the same. The radio crackled again. They're moving. All 3 vehicles. Breach imminent. Marcus stood. Stay low. Stay quiet. And Ethan, yeah. Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know something. You're not invisible anymore. You never will be again. Then he was gone, moving down the corridor with his weapon raised, disappearing into the darkness. Ethan sat alone in the operating theater, his heart pounding, listening to the storm rage outside, and waited for the violence to begin. The first shot came at 2:34 a.m. Ethan heard it even through the walls, a sharp crack that cut through the howling wind. Then another. Then a burst of automatic fire that seemed to go on forever. The radio exploded with voices. Contact East Entrance 4, hostiles heavily armed. North stairwell compromised, 3 more coming up. Dukes hit Dukes down. Ethan's blood ran cold. Old Duke. The man who'd told him about Brotherhood and broken people holding each other together. More gunfire, closer now, shouts echoing through the corridors. The radio crackled. Marcus's voice. Ethan, stay where you are. Do not move. Then nothing. Static. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, his hands shaking. He'd been in fights before, street fights, desperate scuffles over food or territory. But this was different. This was war. A crash from somewhere nearby. Glass shattering. More shots. Then footsteps. Coming closer, Ethan's eyes locked on the door. The footsteps were heavy, purposeful. Not the rhythm of someone he knew. The door handle turned. Ethan slid off the gurney, ignoring the fire in his side, and pressed himself into the corner behind a medical cart. His breath came in short, silent gasps. The door opened. A man stepped through. Tall, dressed in black tactical gear, night vision goggles pushed up on his forehead. He swept the room with professional efficiency, his rifle tracking smoothly from corner to corner. His eyes found Ethan. "Target acquired," he said into a throat mic. "Surgical Wing Operating Theater 2. Ethan didn't think. He grabbed the first thing his hand touched, a metal surgical tray, and hurled it with everything he had. It caught the man in the face. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to startle. The rifle barrel wavered for just a second. Ethan ran. He hit the emergency exit at full speed, slamming through the door into a dark corridor. Behind him, the man cursed and gave chase. Ethan had one advantage: he was small. Fast. He'd spent 3 years learning to navigate tight spaces, to disappear into shadows, to move without being seen. But his side was screaming. Every step sent fresh waves of agony through his body. Blood seeped through his hospital gown, his stitches tearing. He couldn't outrun this man. Not for long. He ducked into a side room and pressed himself flat against the wall beside the door. The footsteps grew closer. Closer. The man appeared in the doorway. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount and swung it with both hands, catching the man in the knee. The contractor went down with a howl of pain. His rifle clattered across the floor. Ethan ran again. Down another corridor. Up a flight of stairs. His vision was blurring, his body failing him, but he kept moving. He burst through a door and almost collided with Tank. "Kid!" Tank grabbed him, steadying him. "Where?" "One of them found me, back there." I hit him, but, "Come on, move!" Tank half-carried him through a maze of corridors, his massive body shielding Ethan from whatever might come. They passed a window, and Ethan caught a glimpse of the world outside, pure white chaos. Snow falling so thick you couldn't see 5 feet. "Duke!" Ethan gasped. "I heard he was hit." "Took one in the shoulder. Jinx is patching him up. Stubborn old bastard is already trying to get back in the fight." "Are we winning?" Tank didn't answer immediately. That told Ethan everything. "We're holding," Tank said finally. "But they've got numbers and firepower. We need to—" He stopped. Ahead of them, blocking the corridor, stood 2 more men in tactical gear. "Get behind me," Tank growled. "Tank, behind me, now!" The 2 contractors raised their weapons. Tank raised his. The world erupted in thunder. Ethan didn't remember hitting the floor. 1 second he was standing behind Tank, the next he was flat on his back, ears ringing, the taste of blood in his mouth. He looked up. Tank was on his knees, clutching his side. Blood poured between his fingers. The 2 contractors were down, not moving. "Tank!" Ethan scrambled to his side. "Tank, no! I'm okay!" Tank's voice was strained but steady. "Through and through. I've had worse." "You've been shot." "I noticed." Tank actually laughed, a wet, pained sound. "Help me up. We need to keep moving." Ethan got his shoulder under Tank's arm and hauled. The big man was impossibly heavy, but desperation gave Ethan strength. They staggered down the corridor together, leaving a trail of blood on the floor. Behind them, Ethan could hear more fighting shouts, gunfire, the chaos of close combat. "Storage closet," Tank grunted. 30 feet. On the left." They made it. Barely. Ethan kicked the door open and helped Tank inside, lowering him to the floor as gently as he could. "Pressure," Tank said, guiding Ethan's hands to the wound. "Keep pressure on it. Don't let up no matter what." Ethan pressed down. Blood soaked through his fingers instantly. Are you? I'm not dying in a storage closet, kid. That's not how this story ends. Tank's eyes were fierce despite the pain. Now listen to me. The brothers will handle this. They'll win. But if something goes wrong, if someone comes through that door, who isn't one of us, I'm not leaving you. Ethan, I said, I'm not leaving you. His voice cracked, tears streaming down his face. Everyone leaves. Everyone always leaves. But I'm not. I won't. Tank's bloody hand came up and gripped Ethan's shoulder. Hey, look at me. Ethan looked. You're not alone anymore. You hear me? Whatever happens, you're not alone. You've got brothers now, a whole club full of us, and we don't abandon our own. The door burst open. Ethan spun, ready to fight, ready to die if he had to. Marcus stood in the doorway, covered in blood, breathing hard but alive. I found them, Marcus said into his radio. Storage closet, second floor. Tank's hit. We need Jinx. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside them. How bad? I'll live. Tank grunted. Kid saved me, led me here. Marcus looked at Ethan. At the blood on his hands, the tears on his face, the fierce determination in his eyes. It's over, Marcus said quietly. We got them. All of them. All of them. 8 hostiles down. Police are on the way. FBI's mobilizing. Ethan's whole body sagged. The adrenaline drained out of him all at once, leaving nothing but exhaustion and pain. Duke, he asked. Alive, cursing up a storm about missing the end of the fight. Nobody died. Marcus shook his head. Injuries, but no deaths. On our side, anyway. Ethan looked down at his blood-covered hands. Tank's blood. His own blood from torn stitches. The blood of everyone who'd fought tonight to protect him. Why? The word came out, broken, barely a whisper. Why would you all risk this for me? Marcus reached out and gently cupped Ethan's face, forcing the boy to meet his eyes. Because you're worth it, he said simply. Because you matter. Because you're one of us now, whether you like it or not. Jinx burst through the door with his medic bag, immediately going to work on Tank. More brothers appeared behind him. Reaper with a gash on his forehead. Spider with his arm in a makeshift sling. Others showing various wounds. They'd all been hurt. They'd all risked their lives. For him. Ethan started to shake. His whole body trembling with something he couldn't name. 3 years of holding everything together, of being strong because nobody else would be strong for him, and it all came crashing down at once. Marcus pulled him into his arms, careful of his injuries. Steady. Warm. Let it out, Marcus murmured. You're safe. You're okay. Let it out. And Ethan Cole, who hadn't cried since his mother died, finally broke. He sobbed into Marcus's chest, his whole body heaving with 3 years of grief and fear and loneliness. He cried for his mother, for his father, who'd abandoned him, for every cold night and hungry day and moment of invisible suffering. He cried because he was alive, because people had fought for him, because for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't alone. The brothers gathered around them, forming a protective circle, bloodied, battered, but unbroken. Outside, the storm began to fade. And in a blood-soaked storage closet surrounded by men who'd risked everything for him, Ethan Cole finally understood what family meant. The morning after the battle, Ethan woke to sunlight. Real sunlight streaming through hospital windows, painting everything golden. The storm had passed. The world outside was buried in white, peaceful, and still, as if the violence of the night had never happened. He tried to sit up, and immediately regretted it. His side screamed in protest. Torn stitches had been replaced with fresh ones, and his entire torso felt like one massive bruise. Easy there, hero. Ethan turned his head. Jinx sat in the chair beside his bed, dark circles under his eyes, a bandage wrapped around his left forearm. How long was I out? About 8 hours. The doctors gave you something for the pain. You needed the rest. Ethan's mind flashed back to the night before. The gunfire, the blood, Tank going down. Tank, he said urgently. Is he alive and complaining about the hospital food? Which means he's fine. Jinx smiled tiredly. Duke's in surgery getting the bullet removed from his shoulder. Reaper needed 16 stitches. Spider's got a fractured wrist. But everyone's breathing. Everyone's going to be okay. Because of me. The words came out flat. They got hurt because of me. Jinx leaned forward, his expression serious. They got hurt because evil people do evil things. You didn't pull any triggers last night. You didn't choose any of this. The only thing you chose was to save a little girl, and that's the opposite of something to feel guilty about. But if you hadn't, Lily Chen would be gone, taken, sold to monsters who do things to children that I can't even describe without wanting to put my fist through a wall. Jinx's voice was hard now. You stopped that. A 12-year-old kid with nothing but courage stopped that. So don't you dare sit there and tell me this is your fault. Ethan didn't know what to say. His whole life he'd learned to take blame, to accept that bad things happened because of him, because he wasn't good enough, wasn't wanted enough, wasn't enough. But Jinx was looking at him like he was something valuable, something worth protecting. The FBI showed up around 4 a.m. Jinx continued, his tone softening. They've arrested everyone connected to the trafficking ring. The whole operation is being dismantled. 23 missing children have been recovered and returned to their families. Ethan's breath caught. 23. Because of what you did. Because you gave them the break they needed. Jinx reached out and squeezed Ethan's shoulder. You're a hero, kid, whether you want to be or not. The door opened and Marcus walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He looked exhausted, clothes wrinkled, stubble darkening his jaw, eyes red from lack of sleep, but he smiled when he saw Ethan awake. There he is. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. That's about right? Marcus handed 1 coffee to Jinx and settled into the other chair. Doctors say you'll need another week in here minimum. Your stitches tore pretty badly when you were running around playing action hero. I wasn't playing. I know. Marcus's smile faded into something more serious. You saved Tank's life last night. He told me what happened. How you got him to that storage closet, kept pressure on his wound, refused to leave him. Ethan looked down at his hands. He would have done the same for me. He would have. But that's not the point. The point is you did it. Without thinking, without hesitation. That's not something you can teach. That's who you are. The words settled into Ethan's chest, warm and unfamiliar. He'd spent so long believing he was worthless. Hearing someone tell him otherwise felt like learning a new language. There's someone who wants to see you, Marcus said. If you're up for it. Who? The door opened again. Jenny Chen stepped in, holding Lily's hand. Ethan! Lily broke free from her mother and ran to the bed, her face lighting up with pure joy. You're awake. Mommy said you were sleeping, and we had to wait, but I wanted to see you so bad. She climbed onto the bed with the fearless confidence of a 6-year-old. Careful not to bump his injured side, someone had clearly coached her and threw her arms around his neck. Ethan froze. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had hugged him. Couldn't remember the last time anyone had been this happy to see him. I made you something, Lily announced, pulling back to dig in her coat pocket. She produced a folded piece of paper slightly crumpled from the journey. It's a snowflake, because you saved me in the snow. See, she unfolded it carefully. A paper snowflake cut with the wobbly precision of a child's hands, each arm slightly different from the others. It's beautiful, Ethan said. His voice came out strange, thick with emotion he couldn't name. Mommy helped me cut the hard parts, but I did the folding all by myself. Jenny approached the bed, her eyes wet. Ethan, I don't know how to thank you. What you did for our daughter, you don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. She reached out and touched his hand. You gave us our baby back. You almost died giving us our baby back. There's no way to repay that. But I want you to know that whatever happens, wherever you end up, you will always be family to us. Lily nodded vigorously. You're my brother now. Daddy said so. Ethan looked at Marcus, who shrugged. Kids repeat everything. But it's true, right? Lily's face was earnest, worried. He's my brother. Marcus and Jenny exchanged a look. Something passed between them, a conversation without words, the kind that happens between people who've been married for years. Yes, sweetheart, Jenny said finally. He's your brother. Lily beamed and hugged Ethan again. This time, he hugged her back. If you believe every child deserves a family who chooses them, drop a comment saying, family is a choice. Let's show Ethan he's not alone. The next few days passed in a blur of visitors and conversations. Detective Morrison came to take Ethan's formal statement. The FBI sent an agent named Reyes, who asked detailed questions about the night of the attack, recording everything for the prosecution's case. Your testimony is going to be crucial, Agent Reyes told him. The men we arrested are trying to claim they were just security contractors, that they didn't know what the organization was really doing. But you can place them at the scene. You can describe what happened. I'll testify, Ethan said. Whatever you need. It won't be easy. Defense attorneys are going to try to discredit you. They'll bring up your background, your time on the streets. They'll try to make you look unreliable. I've been called worse. Reyes smiled slightly. I bet you have. You're a tough kid, Ethan. Toughest I've ever met. The brothers came in shifts, just like before. But the energy was different now. Lighter. They joked with Ethan, taught him card games, brought him comic books and puzzles. Old Duke, arm in a sling, but otherwise indestructible, told stories about the early days of the Iron Wolves that had Ethan laughing until his stitches hurt. Tank visited on the third day, moving slowly, but refusing to use a wheelchair. Heard you dragged my ass to safety, he said, lowering himself into the chair with a grunt. I couldn't exactly leave you in the hallway. Most people would have. Tank's eyes were serious. Most people would have run, saved themselves, let the big guy bleed out while they got to safety. I'm not most people. No, you're not. Tank reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. I want you to have this. He held out a patch. The Iron Wolves emblem. A snarling wolf head surrounded by flames embroidered on black leather. Ethan stared at it. I can't take that. I'm just a kid. You're one of us. Tank pressed the patch into his hand. Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter that you can't ride yet. You earned this. You bled for it. Tank, the brothers voted, unanimous. First time in chapter history we've given a prospect patch to someone under 18. Tank's voice was gruff but warm. You're officially our youngest member. Honorary until you're old enough to ride. But still ours. Ethan looked at the patch in his hand. Such a small thing. Just cloth and thread. But it meant everything. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You're the one who earned it. On the fifth day, Marcus brought someone new. She was a small woman, maybe 65, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore practical clothes and comfortable shoes, and she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent a lifetime dealing with difficult situations. "Ethan, this is Eleanor Hayes," Marcus said. "She runs Pinewood Home for Children." Mrs. Hayes settled into the chair beside the bed and studied Ethan with that penetrating gaze. He studied her back years of street survival, making him cautious of anyone new. "Marcus has told me a lot about you," she said. Her voice was warm, but not syrupy, not fake. "What did he tell you? That you're brave, that you're stubborn, that you don't trust easily, and you've got good reason not to." She tilted her head slightly. "He also told me you saved his daughter's life and nearly died doing it." "Sounds about right. He didn't tell me you were a smartass, but I probably should have guessed." Ethan almost smiled. Almost. "I'm not here to sell you anything," Mrs. Hayes continued. "I'm not here to make promises I can't keep or tell you that everything will be perfect if you just give us a chance. Life doesn't work that way, and you're smart enough to know it." "Then why are you here?" "Because I run a home for children who've been failed by the system. Children who've been through things no child should go through. And I think you might be looking for somewhere to belong." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I've been in foster homes before. It didn't work out." "I know. I read your file." Mrs. Hayes didn't flinch from his gaze. 3 placements in 2 years. The first family moved out of state. The second was overcrowded. The third— She paused. "The third had problems that should have been caught long before you were placed there. They locked me in a closet." The words came out flat, emotionless. "The older kids said it was a game, left me there for a whole day." "I know, and I'm sorry." "You didn't do it." "No, but I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry the system failed you. I'm sorry no one protected you when they should have." She leaned forward slightly. "But I'm not offering you a foster home, Ethan. I'm offering you something different." "What? A place where you're not a case number, not a problem to be managed, not a file that gets passed from desk to desk until everyone forgets you exist." Her voice was steady, certain. "Pinewood isn't fancy. The furniture's second-hand. The carpets are worn. But every child under my roof knows they matter. Every child knows they're safe. And every child knows that I will fight like hell to protect them." Ethan wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her so badly it hurt. But he'd believed people before. He'd trusted before. And every time he'd ended up alone. "Why should I trust you? You shouldn't." Hayes's answer surprised him. "Not yet. Trust is earned, not given. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to earn it. Come visit. Meet the other kids. See the place for yourself. If you hate it, if it feels wrong, Marcus will help you find something else. No pressure, no guilt." She stood up. "I'll be back in 2 days. Think about it." She walked to the door, then paused. "One more thing. My husband was a founding member of the Iron Wolves, William Hayes. He died 5 years ago, but those men still look out for me and my children. If you come to Pinewood, you won't be leaving your new family behind. You'll just be adding to it." She left. Marcus remained watching Ethan's face. "What do you think?" "I don't know what to think." "That's fair." Marcus sat down in the chair Mrs. Hayes had vacated. "But I want you to know something. I've known Eleanor for 15 years. She took me in when I first got back from Afghanistan when I was a mess and didn't know which way was up. She's the real deal. You stayed at Pinewood for 6 months, until I got my head straight." Marcus smiled at the memory. "She saved my life in her own way, not with a knife fight or a firefight, just by being there, by believing I was worth saving when I wasn't sure myself." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, "What if it doesn't work out? Then we figure out something else. Together." Marcus reached out and gripped his shoulder. "But I've got a feeling about this one kid. I think this might be exactly what you need." 2 days later, Ethan was discharged from the hospital. The doctors gave him a long list of instructions: what to eat, what not to do, how to care for his healing wound. Marcus loaded him into his truck, careful and gentle, like he was handling something precious. The drive to Pinewood took 20 minutes. Ethan spent most of it staring out the window, watching the snow-covered town pass by. Normal houses, normal people, normal lives. He'd never had a normal life. He wasn't sure he'd know what to do with one. They pulled up to a 2-story house with a neat yard and a sign out front that read, "Pinewood Home for Children," in cheerful letters. A basketball hoop stood in the driveway. Chalk drawings decorated the front walk, half buried in snow. "Ready?" Marcus asked. "No." "That's okay. Let's go anyway." Mrs. Hayes met them at the door. Behind her, Ethan could hear voices, children laughing, someone arguing about a board game. The smell of cooking food, real food, home food, drifted from somewhere inside. "Welcome to Pinewood," Mrs. Hayes said. "Come in, get warm." Ethan stepped inside. The house was exactly what she'd described. Not fancy, not new. Furniture that had been loved hard and used well. Carpets that showed the traffic patterns of dozens of small feet over dozens of years. Walls covered in children's artwork and family photos. But it felt alive. It felt real. "Let me show you around," Mrs. Hayes said. "Then you can meet the other children." She took him through the house room by room. The living room where kids gathered for movies and games. The kitchen where everyone ate together. The small library stocked with donated books. The backyard with its vegetable garden dormant now under the snow. Upstairs, she showed him the bedrooms. 4 of them, each shared by 2 or 3 children. Small, but clean. Each bed had its own space, its own shelf for belongings, its own small corner of the world. "This would be your room," Mrs. Hayes said, stopping at the last door. "If you decide to stay." 2 beds. 1 occupied, 1 empty. The occupied side had posters on the wall, superheroes and sports teams, and a desk covered in homework. "Your roommate is Daniel. He's 14. Been here 2 years." Mrs. Hayes smiled. "He's shy at first, but once he warms up, you can't get him to stop talking." Ethan walked to the empty bed. Fresh sheets, clean pillowcase. A small dresser beside it, empty and waiting. He'd slept in doorways, in dumpster alcoves, behind heating vents. He'd woken up with frost on his eyelashes and rats nosing at his shoes. This bed looked like a dream. "I know it's not much," Mrs. Hayes said quietly, "but it's yours if you want it." Ethan turned to face her. "Why are you doing this? Doing what? Taking in kids like me. Kids that nobody wants." Mrs. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down on the edge of Daniel's bed and patted the space beside her. Ethan hesitated, then sat. "When I was young," she said, "I wanted children more than anything. My husband and I tried for years. It never happened." She smiled sadly. "So we decided that if we couldn't have children of our own, we'd take care of the ones who needed us most." "How many?" "Over the years, hundreds. Some stayed for a few months. Some stayed until they were grown. Some come back to visit, bring their own children, show me I made a difference." Her voice was steady, certain. "I can't save everyone. I can't fix everything that's broken in this world. But I can give a few children a safe place to grow. A few children who might otherwise have been forgotten." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm not easy. I have nightmares. I don't trust people. I run when things get hard." "I know. I might run from here, too." Maybe. But I'll still be here when you come back." The certainty in her voice broke something in Ethan, something he'd been holding together with sheer will for 3 years. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, what? Okay, I'll stay." He looked at her with eyes that were suddenly bright with tears. "I'll try." Mrs. Hayes smiled and pulled him into a hug. Not demanding, not possessive, just warm. "That's all I ask," she murmured. "Just try." The first week at Pinewood was strange. Ethan didn't know how to act in a house with rules and schedules and people who expected him to show up for meals. He kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to yell at him, for the kindness to turn into something ugly. It didn't happen. Mrs. Hayes woke them up at 7 every morning. Breakfast at 7:30. School at 8. Homework after school. Chores before dinner. Dinner at 6, everyone together around a big table passing plates and talking about their days. At first, Ethan didn't talk. He sat at the table, ate his food, answered questions with as few words as possible. The other kids, 11 of them, ranging from 6 to 17, watched him with curiosity but didn't push. Daniel, his roommate, was the first to crack through his defenses. "I heard what you did," Daniel said one night, lying in his bed across the room. "The bikers who visit, they told everyone." Ethan stared at the ceiling. "What did they tell you?" "That you saved a little girl from a kidnapper. That you fought off a whole gang of traffickers. That you're basically a superhero." "I'm not a superhero." "Tank says you dragged him to safety when he was shot. That you kept pressure on his wound until help came. That you wouldn't leave him even when more bad guys were coming." Ethan didn't respond. "That sounds pretty superhero to me," Daniel said quietly. Then after a pause, "I was scared when I first came here too. Thought it was going to be like all the other places. Thought they'd give up on me." "Did they?" "No. Mrs. Hayes doesn't give up. It's like annoying sometimes, but also kind of great." Ethan almost smiled. Yeah. Daniel rolled over to face him. "It gets better, you know. Being here, it takes a while, but it gets better." "How do you know?" "Because I was where you are. And now I'm not." The brothers came every week. Tank, fully recovered, taught Ethan basic mechanics in the garage behind the house. How to change oil. How to check tire pressure. How to diagnose an engine problem by sound alone. Jinx helped with math homework, making algebra actually make sense through card trick analogies. Spider brought chess sets and strategy games, challenging Ethan to think 3 moves ahead. Reaper came to every school event, parent-teacher conferences, holiday concerts, the spring talent show, where Ethan awkwardly read a poem he'd written and received a standing ovation from a row of leather-clad bikers. And Marcus came most of all. He took Ethan to dinner once a week. Just the two of them. They'd sit in a booth at some diner and talk about everything and nothing. School, the other kids at Pinewood, Ethan's nightmares, which were getting less frequent, his mother, whose memory was getting easier to hold without pain. "I talked to the prosecutor yesterday," Marcus said one evening, 6 weeks after Ethan had moved to Pinewood. "Trial starts next month." Ethan nodded. He'd been expecting this, dreading it. "You don't have to testify if you don't want to. They've got enough evidence without you." "I want to." Ethan's voice was steady. "Those men took children. Sold them. I want to look them in the eye and tell everyone what they did." Marcus studied him across the table. "You've changed." "Have I? When I first met you, you wouldn't look anyone in the eye. You flinched every time someone moved too fast. You were ready to run at any moment." He smiled slightly. "Now look at you. Sitting here talking about facing down a courtroom full of lawyers and criminals. I'm still scared. Being scared is smart. Being brave anyway is extraordinary. Marcus reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. I'm proud of you, kid. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that. Ethan felt his throat tighten. 3 words he'd never heard from anyone since his mother died. I'm proud of you. Thank you, he managed. For everything. For staying. For fighting. For not giving up on me. Never, Marcus said firmly. Not ever. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Ethan testified on the 4th day. He walked into the courtroom in clothes Mrs. Hayes had bought him, his first suit navy blue, slightly too big, but close enough. The brothers filled the gallery behind him, a wall of leather and loyalty. The defense attorney was exactly as aggressive as Agent Reyes had warned. She attacked Ethan's credibility, his background, his time on the streets. She implied he was lying for attention. She suggested he'd been coached. Ethan didn't flinch. He answered every question clearly and calmly. He described the kidnapping attempt in detail. He identified the men who'd attacked the hospital. He looked Vincent Marsh in the eye, the man who'd stabbed him, who'd tried to take Lily, and told the jury exactly what had happened. When it was over, when the defense had finally run out of questions, the prosecutor asked one final thing. Ethan, why did you intervene that day? You were 12 years old, homeless alone. Why didn't you just walk away? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because someone had to. Because that little girl couldn't save herself. Because my mom taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when it costs them something. He paused. Saving Lily almost cost me my life. But I'd do it again, every time. The courtroom was silent. Marcus wiped his eyes. And in the gallery, Lily Chen, who'd insisted on being there, who'd held her mother's hand through the entire testimony, whispered to herself, "That's my brother." The verdict came on a Tuesday. Guilty. All counts. All defendants. The trafficking ring's leadership received life sentences. Vincent Marsh got 40 years. The contractors who'd attacked the hospital got 20 each. It was over. Ethan sat in the courtroom as the verdicts were read, surrounded by the people who'd become his family. Marcus on one side, Mrs. Hayes on the other, the brothers filling the rows behind him. He thought about his mother, about the promise he'd made to be brave, to be good, about all the nights he'd spent alone on the streets, wondering if anyone would ever care whether he lived or died. And he realized something. He wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't forgotten. He was home. 10 years passed like the turning of pages in a book Ethan never thought he'd get to write. The boy who'd slept behind heating vents became a man who opened doors for others still lost in those same shadows. At 22, Ethan Hayes, he'd taken Mrs. Hayes's name, when she became his legal guardian at 16, stood in his office at the Pinewood Community Center 3 blocks from the alley where everything changed. His college diploma hung on the wall, Bachelor of Social Work printed in formal script. Beside it in a simple frame was a paper snowflake faded, now its edges soft from years of handling. Lily's first gift. The first thing anyone had given him after his life shattered and reformed into something he'd never imagined possible. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Running late. Lily's nervous about tonight. See you at 6. Ethan smiled and typed back, "Tell her she'll be fine. She's been preparing for this her whole life." Tonight was the annual Iron Wolves Charity Gala. 10 years of fundraising for at-risk youth, 10 years of building something from the ashes of that frozen December. And tonight, 16-year-old Lily Chen would give her first public speech, about why protecting children mattered. Ethan remembered being terrified of public speaking, remembered standing in that courtroom at 12 years old facing down lawyers and criminals, his voice steady, even when his hands shook. Lily had the same courage. She just didn't know it yet. A knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." The door opened. A boy stood there, maybe 13, with hollow eyes and a defensive posture that Ethan recognized in his bones. Dirty clothes, matted hair, the particular wariness of a child who'd learned that the world wasn't safe. "You Ethan Hayes." "I am. The lady at the front desk said you help kids like me." Ethan stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. "What's your name? Why do you care? Because names matter. Because you matter." Ethan gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down. Tell me what's going on." The boy hesitated. Ethan could see him calculating, weighing options, looking for the trap. He'd done the same thing at that age. Done it for years before he finally learned that some people actually meant what they said. "My name's Marcus," the boy finally said. "Like the biker." Ethan's heart clenched. "You know about the bikers? Everyone on the streets knows about them. They help kids. They don't call the cops." The boy. Marcus sat down slowly. "I heard you were one of them, a street kid who got out." "I was, a long time ago." "How'd you do it?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying this boy, who could have been him a decade ago. Same fear, same distrust, same desperate hope buried beneath layers of survival instinct. "Someone believed in me," Ethan said quietly, "when I didn't believe in myself. Someone fought for me when I'd forgotten how to fight for anything except making it through each day. Nobody fights for kids like me." "That's not true. I'm sitting right here." Marcus's jaw tightened. Ethan saw tears threatening behind those defensive eyes. "I've been on the streets for 8 months. Since my mom's boyfriend kicked me out. I've been sleeping under bridges, eating out of dumpsters, running from cops who want to put me in the system." His voice cracked. "I can't go back into the system. Last time they put me with a family that—" He stopped. Couldn't finish. Ethan didn't push. He knew what the boy wasn't saying, knew the kinds of things that happened in homes where no one was really watching. "You don't have to go back into the system," Ethan said carefully. "There are other options." "Like what?" "Like Pinewood, the place I grew up. Mrs. Hayes is 80 now, but she's still running things, still taking in kids who need somewhere safe." "Why would she take me?" "Because that's what she does. That's what we do." Ethan reached into his desk drawer and pulled out something he kept there for moments exactly like this. A paper snowflake freshly made its edges crisp and perfect. "Here." He held it out. Marcus stared at it like it might bite him. "What is it?" "A snowflake. A reminder that beautiful things can come from cold places." Ethan smiled slightly. "Someone gave me one of these when I was 12, after I'd been stabbed, after I'd almost died. It was the first gift I'd received in years." "Why are you giving it to me?" "Because you need to know that someone sees you, that you're not invisible, that whatever happens next, you're not facing it alone." Marcus's hand trembled as he reached out and took the snowflake. He held it carefully like something precious. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why do you care about some random homeless kid?" "Because I was you. Because someone cared about me when they didn't have to. Because kindness is a choice you make every day, and I choose to make it." Ethan stood and walked around his desk. "My mother taught me that, right before she died. She said the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when it costs them something. He crouched down to be at eye level with Marcus. Helping you might cost me time, energy, resources. But you're worth it. Every kid who walks through that door is worth it. Marcus broke. The tough facade crumbled all at once, and he started crying the messy, desperate sobs of a child who'd been holding everything together for far too long. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled the boy into a hug, holding him steady while the storm raged through. "You're okay," Ethan murmured. "You're safe. We've got you." The words echoed across a decade, the same words Marcus Chen had said to him in a blood-soaked alley, the same words that had saved his life. Now Ethan was saying them to someone else. The cycle continued. If you believe every invisible child deserves to be seen, comment, "I see you," below. Let's fill this section with proof that nobody has to face the darkness alone. The gala started at 7. Ethan arrived early to help with setup, but the Iron Wolves had already handled everything. The community center's main hall was transformed tables with white cloths, centerpieces made by kids from Pinewood photos on every wall, showing a decade of work. The photos told a story. Kids who'd come through the program over the years. Before and after shots. Hollow-eyed children becoming smiling teenagers. Teenagers becoming young adults with diplomas and jobs and families of their own. Ethan's photo was there too. The one Marcus had taken after the trial, when the verdict came down guilty, and Ethan had finally believed that justice was possible. He'd been 12 in that photo. Thin-scarred, but with something new in his eyes. Hope. "You're staring at yourself again." Ethan turned. Lily stood behind him, 16 now, tall, and poised in a blue dress that matched her mother's eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. She looked terrified. "Just remembering," Ethan said. "How are you feeling? Like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal." "Easy for you to say. You testified in front of a whole courtroom when you were my age. And I almost passed out twice. Ask Marcus." He was there. Lily's lips quirked into something that might become a smile. "Really? Really. I was so nervous I forgot half my speech. Had to improvise the whole thing." "But you did it anyway." "I did it anyway. Because it mattered. Because some things are worth being scared for." Ethan put his hands on her shoulders. "What you're doing tonight matters, Lily. Every word you say could reach someone who needs to hear it. Some kid watching on their phone thinking nobody cares. Some parent who doesn't know how to help. Some politician who might actually listen for once. What if I mess up? Then you'll be human, and people connect with human." He squeezed her shoulders gently. "You've got this. I believe in you." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Jenny appeared beside them, elegant in silver, her face glowing with maternal pride. 5 minutes, sweetheart. Are you ready?" Lily took a deep breath. "No, but I'm going anyway." Ethan grinned. "That's my sister." The room was packed. 300 people filled the hall. Iron Wolves members and their families, donors, politicians, journalists, community leaders. 10 years of building relationships, proving that men in leather vests could be heroes too. Marcus took the stage first. His beard was gray now, his face more weathered than it had been a decade ago, but his presence still commanded attention. 10 years ago, he began, a homeless boy saved my daughter's life. The room went quiet. He was 12 years old. He weighed maybe 90 pounds. He had nothing, no family, no home, no one looking for him. But when a kidnapper grabbed my little girl, this boy didn't run. He didn't hide. He threw himself in front of a knife to give her time to escape. Marcus's voice roughened. I found him bleeding out in the snow, dying, and I made a decision that night that changed everything. I decided that this boy wasn't going to be invisible anymore, that he was going to matter, that my brothers and I were going to fight for him the way we'd fight for our own. He looked at Ethan sitting in the front row. That boy is now a man, a social worker who's helped hundreds of kids find their way out of the same darkness he escaped. He runs our youth outreach program. He builds futures where there were none. And he taught me something I'll never forget. Marcus paused. He taught me that courage isn't about size or age. It's about doing what's right when someone needs you. It's about standing up when everyone else looks away. It's about believing that one person can make a difference. He gestured toward the stage. Tonight, I want you to hear from someone who learned that lesson before she could even tie her shoes. My daughter, Lily Chen. Applause erupted as Lily walked to the microphone. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. When I was 6 years old, a man tried to take me. The room fell silent. I don't remember much about that day. I remember playing in the snow. I remember being scared. I remember a boy, a stranger, telling me to run. Her voice cracked slightly. I remember running. She looked at Ethan. What I didn't know then was that boy almost died saving me. He was stabbed. He bled out in the same snow where I'd been playing. And for what? For a little girl he'd never even talked to. For someone who meant nothing to him. Lily straightened her shoulders. But here's the thing. I wasn't nothing to him. I was someone worth protecting. Every child is someone worth protecting. And Ethan, my brother, in every way that matters, he understood that when he was 12 years old. He understood it so deeply that he was willing to die for it. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice grew stronger. We're here tonight because Ethan showed us what courage looks like. We're here because a group of bikers who everyone thought were dangerous turned out to be the safest people in the world. We're here because one act of selfless bravery changed everything. She looked out at the crowd. There are children on the streets right now. Invisible children. Forgotten children. Kids who've been failed by everyone who was supposed to protect them. They're waiting for someone to see them, to fight for them, to tell them they matter. Her voice rang out clear and certain. Be that someone. That's all we're asking. See them. Help them. Fight for them. Because every single one of those kids could be the next Ethan Hayes. Every single one of them could change the world if we just give them the chance. She stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted. The applause lasted 3 full minutes. When it finally died down, Ethan found himself surrounded donors wanting to shake his hand, journalists asking for interviews, politicians making promises they might actually keep. But through the crowd, he saw something that made his heart stop. A face in the doorway, weathered, uncertain, painfully familiar. His father. Ethan excused himself and pushed through the crowd, his heart hammering. 10 years. 10 years since he'd seen that face, since he'd been abandoned in a house that still smelled like his mother's absence. Ethan. His father's voice was rough. Broken. I saw you on the news. The trial. Everything you've done since. I had to. Why are you here? I needed to tell you something. Something I should have said a long time ago. Ethan's jaw tightened. All the anger he'd buried came surging back. All the pain. All the years of believing he wasn't worth staying for. You left me. The words came out hard. Mom died, and you just left. I was 9 years old, and you looked at me and said you couldn't do it anymore, like I was the problem, Like losing her wasn't enough, I had to lose you, too. I know. Tears spilled down his father's weathered face. I know what I did. I was broken, Ethan. Your mother was the only thing holding me together, and when she died, I shattered. I looked at you and I saw her, every day, and it was killing me. So you threw me away. I ran. I ran because I was weak, because I was drowning and I didn't know how to swim. And by the time I got my head above water, years had passed. I tried to find you, but you'd disappeared. Social services said you ran away from foster care. They said you were probably dead. His father's voice broke. I thought I'd killed you. By leaving. By being too much of a coward to face my own grief, I thought I'd killed my son. Ethan didn't know what to feel. The anger was still there, burning. But beneath it was something else. Something that looked a lot like the same grief his father was carrying. I'm not dead, Ethan said quietly. I know. I can see that. I can see everything you've become. His father looked at him with eyes full of regret and wonder. You're a hero. You save kids. You built a life that matters. And you did it without me. Despite me. I did it because other people stepped up when you didn't. Marcus, Mrs. Hayes, the brothers. Ethan's voice was steady but heavy. They became my family because you couldn't be. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for another chance. I just needed you to know. His father's voice cracked. I needed you to know that I'm sorry. That not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted leaving. That I'm proud of you, Ethan. Prouder than I have any right to be. Ethan stood there looking at this broken man who'd once been his whole world. The father who'd taught him to ride a bike. Who'd read him bedtime stories. Who'd held his mother's hand at the end and then let go of everything else. I can't forgive you yet, Ethan said finally. Maybe someday. But not yet. I understand. But I'm glad you came. I'm glad you know I'm alive. That I'm okay. Ethan took a breath. Mom would have wanted that. His father nodded, tears streaming freely now. She would be so proud of you. She always knew you'd be something special. I had a good teacher. They stood there in silence for a long moment. Not touching, not embracing, just two people finally facing the chasm between them. There's someone I want you to meet, Ethan said finally. A boy who just came in today. His name is Marcus. He reminds me of me. His father's brow furrowed. Why are you telling me this? Because he needs people. Because helping him might be a way for you to start making amends. Not to me, you can't make amends to me, not yet. But to the world. To the kids who are where I was. Ethan looked at his father steadily. Mrs. Hayes always says that broken people can either break others or help them heal. You broke me once. Maybe now you can help heal someone else. His father was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Show me how, Shatsu. The gala raised more money than any previous year. Enough to expand the outreach program. Enough to hire 3 new counselors. Enough to open a second community center on the other side of town in the neighborhood where Ethan used to sleep behind heating vents. As the crowd thinned, Ethan found himself standing by the wall of photos again. Lily joined him. Her speech finished, her fear conquered. Good job tonight, he said. I only threw up once, before I went on. Progress. She laughed and leaned against his shoulder. I saw your dad. Are you okay? I don't know. I think so. Ethan was quiet for a moment. He wants to help. With the program. I think he might actually mean it. Do you trust him? No, but I trust that people can change. I'm proof of that. Marcus approached them, Jenny at his side. Old Duke followed, walking slower these days, but still sharp-eyed and strong. "Hell of a night," Duke said. "You should be proud." "I am." Ethan looked at these people gathered around him. His family. Not by blood, by choice, by sacrifice, by a decade of standing together through everything the world threw at them. "I have something for you," Duke said. He reached into his vest and pulled out a small wooden box. "From the chapter. All of us." Ethan opened it. Inside was a ring. Simple silver with the Iron Wolves emblem engraved on the face. Below the emblem, 2 words, "Forever Family." "We voted again," Duke said, his voice rough. "You've been honorary since you were 12. But it's time to make it official. You're not just a brother in spirit, Ethan. You're in the charter, full member, first one to ever be inducted without owning a bike." Ethan stared at the ring. His hands were shaking. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Marcus said simply. "Say you're ours. You've always been ours. This just makes it permanent." Ethan slid the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm yours." The brothers gathered around him. Handshakes and hugs, back slaps and teary eyes. 30 years of combined military service, hundreds of kids helped, and at the center of it all, one boy who'd once been invisible. "Speech!" someone called. Ethan shook his head. "I'm not good at speeches." "Bullshit," Tank said. "You testified in front of the whole damn country." "That was different." "How?" Ethan looked at the faces around him, at Marcus and Jenny and Lily, at Duke and Tank and Jinx and Spider and Reaper, at Mrs. Hayes, 80 years old, and still running Pinewood with an iron will, at the photo of himself at 12, bleeding, broken, but still fighting. "Fine," he said. "One speech." He stepped to the center of the room. Everyone fell silent. 10 years ago, I was invisible. I was a ghost, a statistic, a kid that society had thrown away and forgotten about. I slept in alleys. I ate from dumpsters. I truly believed, that I would die alone and nobody would even notice. His voice grew stronger. Then I met a little girl who waved at me like I was a person. I met a family of bikers who fought for me when they didn't have to. I met a woman who opened her home to broken children and showed me what real love looks like. And I learned something that changed everything. He looked at each face in turn. I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about standing beside someone when the world is falling apart and saying, "I've got you. You're not alone." That's what you did for me. All of you. You saw an invisible boy, and you made him visible. You saw someone society had given up on, and you said, "Not this one. This one matters." Every kid out there on the streets, every forgotten child, every throwaway child, every child who thinks nobody will ever love them, they matter too. They're worth fighting for. They're worth believing in. His voice rang through the hall. I was 12 years old when I learned that one moment can change everything, but only if someone cares enough to act, only if someone is brave enough to see the invisible, only if someone is willing to fight for a stranger who has nothing to offer in return. Be that someone, for every kid who's waiting to be seen, for every child who's convinced they'll always be alone. Be the person who shows up. Be the person who stays. He raised his hand, showing the ring that marked him as family. Because that's what heroes do. Not the ones in comic books, the real ones, the ones who change lives just by giving a damn. The room erupted in applause. And Ethan Hayes, the boy who'd once been invisible, who'd fought and bled and survived, who'd built a life from the ashes of abandonment, finally understood what his mother had been trying to teach him all along. Kindness was a choice. Courage was a choice. Family was a choice. And every single day, he would choose all three. If you're still watching, if this story reached your heart, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video. Comment "I matter" below if you believe every invisible child deserves to be seen. Because somewhere out there right now, there's a kid like Ethan. A kid who's cold and hungry and alone. A kid who thinks nobody will ever fight for them. Prove them wrong. Show them they matter. Be the hero who shows up. Ethan was 12 years old when he learned that one person could change everything. He took a knife to save a stranger's daughter. He stood against evil when everyone else looked away. He was broken. He was abandoned. He was invisible. But he was brave. And because of that bravery, because of the family that chose him, because of the people who refused to let him disappear, he became something no one ever expected. He became the one who helps others find their way home. The boy who was invisible is invisible. No more, and his light will shine for generations to come.